When it comes to some of the biggest games of all time, it's hard to overlook Rockstar's Grand Theft Auto series. This franchise has consistently pushed the boundaries of what's possible in gaming, leaving an indelible mark on the industry. There's a reason so many people look back fondly on these games. They're not just titles, they're cultural phenomena. Personally, I have vivid memories of playing Grand Theft Auto 3 for the first time, marveling on the transition from the 2D to fully realized 3D environments. It was groundbreaking, and years later the leap of the 6th generation consoles brought us Grand Theft Auto 4, a pivotal turning point not just for the series, but for gaming as a whole. The Grand Theft Auto franchise is one of those rare entities where nearly everyone has a story to tell. Preferences vary widely from person to person, but at least one title in the series has likely captured the attention and time of every fan. For me, that standout was Grand Theft Auto 4, my personal favorite. So when it launched, even people who weren't typically into gaming were talking about it. The game's culture impact was so immense that it became a topic of conversation in circles far removed from the gaming. It's no wonder it still holds up on the highest aggregate review scores on Metacritic. Rockstar has created a plethora of solid games over the years, but the Grand Theft Auto series remains their magnus opus. For me, Grand Theft Auto 4 stands out as their masterpiece, even though it's somewhat amusing to recall now. At the time, some fans considered it a step down from San Andreas. Let's unpack that sentiment. One notable change in Grand Theft Auto 4 is the removal of property purchases, which some fans lamented. However, considering the compact nature of the Liberty City, this absence doesn't detract from its experience, whether you need to go into just a short drive or taxi ride away. Speaking of taxis, the addition of the ability to fast travel across the city in cabs was a game changer. Whether you want to skip a long drive or quickly get to the next mission, it streamlined the gameplay in a way that felt natural. Liberty City's landmarks were another highlight. From the carnival rides at the Ferry Flyer Island to the Times Square's inspired Star Junction and the bustling airport, the city was full of iconic locations. These areas weren't just for the show, they often became the backdrop for memorable moments in both the story and multiplayer modes. Grand Theft Auto 4 also simplified and streamlined several mechanics compared to San Andreas. Gone were the stats for the stamina, lung capacity, respect, and sex appeal. While these features added depth to San Andreas, they could also feel like an unnecessary distractions. In Grand Theft Auto 4, you could hop into any vehicle and drive it proficiently from the first mission to the last. There was no need to worry about maintaining your character's physique or managing relationship to the same extent as in San Andreas. These changes made the game feel more focused. Combat was another area where Grand Theft Auto 4 shined. While San Andreas had an impressive array of weapons and combat styles, the mechanics often felt clunky. In contrast, Grand Theft Auto 4's shooting and cover system were a revelation. The game came out at the time when cover-based shooting was becoming the standard, and Rockstar implemented it beautifully. Weapons felt impactful and varied, with each type of offering distinct advantages. The physics engine Euphoria was another standout feature. Unlike traditional ragdoll physics, Euphoria added levels of realism that made every encounter feel dynamic and visceral. Enemies didn't just collapse when shot, they reacted believably, often trying to regain balance or crawl away if injured. The attention to the detail extended to every aspect of the game's physics and animations, whether it was the way pedestrians stumbled after being hit, or how vehicles reacted to collisions. Grand Theft Auto 4's world felt alive. Water physics, while not prominently featured as in other games, were also impressive. Waves reacted to boats and explosions in a way that was years ahead of its time. Rockstar's commitment to create a believable world wasn't limited to physics. The game's audio design and the soundtrack were equally memorable. The end of missions jingles and the iconic loading screen's music are etched into the minds of the fans. There's just no denying the brilliance of Grand Theft Auto 4's soundscape. Another area where Grand Grand Theft Auto 4 innovated was its mission structure. While the game retained the open-world freedom that the series is known for, it also introduced a more cinematic approach to the storytelling. Missions felt more cohesive and impactful, often blending gameplay with narrative in ways that elevated the experience. The moral choices presented during the certain missions added another layer of complexity, allowing players to shape Niko Bellic's journey in the subtlest of ways. Grand Theft Auto 4's multiplayer mode was another noteworthy feature. While it may not have had the depth of the modern online games, it offered a sandbox for the players to create their own chaos. From racing through the city to engaging in all-out wars at the airport, multiplayer was a playground for creativity and mayhem. Of course, no discussion of Grand Theft Auto 4 would be complete without mentioning its protagonist, Niko Bellic. As a character, Niko was a departure from the typical GTA lead. His story was one of loss, revenge, and a pursuit of a better life. This emotional depth set him apart and made his journey resonate with players. The supporting cast, from Roman's comedic relief to the morally ambiguous figures like Dimitri and Mikhail, added a layer to narrative. In earlier Grand Theft Auto games, evading a 1 or 2 star wanted level was often a trivial task. A short drive around the block or ducking into the alley was usually enough to shake the police, who seemed to forget about your existence almost instantly. However, the release of the Grand Theft Auto 4, Rockstar Games revolutionized the wanted level system, adding layers of the complexity and realism that signifying the altering of the player's experience. Unlike its predecessors, where the police presence felt more like a temporary nuisance, Grand Theft Auto 4 introduces a more of a dynamic and persistent law enforcement system. Once the police were alerted to your activities, they didn't just swarm aimlessly. Instead, they actively tracked you with a designated wanted zone. Now, this zone represented on the in-game map, forcing players to escape the marked area and stay out of the officer's line of sight to reduce their wanted level. This mechanic encourages strategic thinking and heightening tension, as you could no longer rely on simple tricks to evade the pursuit. Now, escaping wasn't always straightforward. If you accidentally drove into an out-of-patrol car or were spotted by an officer on foot, the pursuit intensified. This resets the police's search efforts, often making a bad situation worse. The higher the wanted level, the more relentless the pursuit became. At 3 to 4 stars, it wasn't just the police chasing you. Specialized units like news agents and helicopters joined the fray. At 5-star level, well, basically the whole hell breaks loose. Now, this system's realism was a double-edged sword. On the one hand, it created a thrilling experience where losing the cops required skillful driving, clever navigations, and sometimes a bit of luck. On the other hand, it could be a little bit frustrating when patrol cars seem to materialize out of the thin air, blocking your carefully planned escape route. High-speed chases often ended in tense moments of narrowing, avoiding capture, or smashing into barricades. This emphasized the outmaneuvering and stealth rather than brute force or raw speed. The driving mechanics in Grand Theft Auto 4 also underwent a dramatic overhaul, polarizing fans at the time of the release. Previous entries in the series allowed for almost arcade-style handling, where cars could take corners at full speed with handbrake without much consequences. Grand Theft Auto 4, however, introduces a physics-driven system that emphasizes vehicle weight, traction, and realistic handling. This change was a wake-up call for the players accustomed to unrealistically forgiving controls. Every car in the game had a distinct feel, influenced by a factor like drive-terrain type, weight distribution, and suspension. Driving a rear-wheel drive sport car, for instance, made it clear that the power was concentrated at the back wheels, leading to oversteer in tight corners. Heavy vehicles like SUVs and trucks were sluggish but sturdy, while lighter cars had better acceleration but could be difficult to control at high speeds. The learning curve was steep for many players. Taking corners required more precision, and using the handbrake carelessly often results in embarrassing spinouts or crashes. While some fans criticized this shift, others praised it for adding depth and immersion. It made vehicle pursuit feel grounded and engaging, rewarding players who mastered the nuanced controls. Another standout feature was the game's damage modeling, which was a significant leap forward in the series. Vehicles now showed realistic wear and tear during the collisions. Headlights shattered, bumpers detached, and the chassis crumbled under the force of the impact. If you pushed a car to its limits, the engine could overheat and fail entirely. Flipping a car no longer resulted in an automatic explosion, a trope from the earlier games that often felt like an arbitrary punishment. Instead, vehicles required significant damage to ignite, usually from sustained gunfire or severe crashes. Players could even toggle between normal and high beam headlights for better visibility at night, wash their cars at service stations to remove dirt, and observe how grimes accumulate over the time. While some of these features were arguably unnecessary, they showcase Rockstar's commitment to creating a detailed and immersive world. These small touches added to the sense of realism, making Liberty City feel alive and reactive. For the first time, Grand Theft Auto 4 made crossing the streets a genuine dangerous endeavor. In early games, getting hit by a car might shave off a sliver of health, but in Grand Theft Auto 4 it could be fatal. This change forced players to be more mindful of their surroundings, adding a layer of realism that many players appreciated. Similarly, ejecting from a moving car, sometimes Niko Bellic seemed to do often, frequently resulting in a severe injury or even death. The absence of seatbelts might have seemed like an oversight, but it fit Niko's criminal lifestyle, where speed and efficiency often took precedence over safety. Despite its realism, the game wasn't without its quirks. Occasionally vehicles behaved erratically, and the physics engine produced unintentionally hilarious moments. Cars might bounce off objects in ways that defying logic, or NPCs' drivers might react unpredictably to players' actions. Yet these imperfections rarely detracted from the overall experience. Instead, they added a layer of unpredictability that kept players on their toes. Beyond its gameplay mechanics, Grand Theft Auto 4 excelled in storytelling, offering that many fans consider the best narrative in the series. The game's protagonist, of course, Niko Bellic, was a breath of fresh air, a war-torn immigrant chasing the American dream. Niko's journey was both relatable and tragic. Unlike the larger-than-life character of earlier games, Niko felt grounded and human. His dry humor, moral ambiguity, and complex backstory made him one of the franchise's most compelling protagonists. The story began simply enough. Niko arrives in Liberty City to help his cousin Roman, who has exaggerated his success in America. What starts as a tale of family loyalty and survival soon spirals into a sprawling crime saga. Niko becomes entangled with a colorful cast of characters, from mob bosses to small-time hustlers. These relationships drove the narrative, with each mission revealed more about the Liberty City's seedy underbelly. Rockstar's attention to the detail extended to the game's cinematic and dialogue. Characters felt authentic, with motivations and personality that went beyond stereotypical archetypes. Even the antagonists were memorable, with believable motivations that made their actions feel grounded. The game's ability to balance humor with darker themes was a testament to Rockstar's narrative prowess. One of the Grand Theft Auto 4's most notable features was the moral decision-making. Unlike previous games where players followed a linear storyline, Grand Theft Auto 4 presented moments where Niko had to make a difficult choice. These decisions often had lasting consequences, affecting the narrative and how other characters perceive Niko. For example, players might choose whether to spare or execute key characters, adding a layer of their responsibility and replayability. Niko's reluctance to engage in unnecessary violence further humanized him, unlike Trevor from the Grand Theft Auto 5, who revels in chaos. Niko often expressed regret or hesitation. This contrast made him a more relatable and sympathetic character. His loyalty to Roman and disdain for his violent past highlighted his internal struggles, making his journey all the more compelling. A significant part of the Grand Theft Auto 4's charm came from its supporting characters, many of whom felt like genuine friends. Lil Jacob, Brucey, Packy, Dwayne, and Roman were standout examples of Rockstar's character writing. Each brought something unique to the table, whether it was Jacob's loyalty, Bruce's over-the-top personality, or Roman's optimism in the face of adversity. Interacting with these characters wasn't just for the story progression. Players could hang out with them, strengthening bonds, and unlocking rewards. Little Jacob's discounted weapons, Roman's free cab rides, and Bruce's helicopter service were practical incentives to invest in these relationships. The game's emphasis on the commemorate made Liberty City feel less like a playground and more like a lived-in world. So, in a world of video games, creating a living, breathing world is one of the most challenging and rewarding aspects of the game design. Grand Theft Auto 4 exemplifies this concept by immersing players in a city that feels as the real ones it draws inspiration from. Liberty City, a fictionalized version of New York City, is not just a backdrop but a character in itself, teeming with detail and activities. This game was a landmark experience for me, a moment when I truly felt a leap to what many were calling a next-gen gaming. It was the first PlayStation 3 game that made me feel part of the world brimming with authenticity. And coming up over 17 years later, this cityscape remains one of the most comfortable and believable environments I have ever explored in a video game. So what makes Liberty City so captivating? It's the relentless activity and details, regardless of where you are at the time of the day. On any given street you might see pedestrians strolling, glancing at their phones, or sipping coffee. When it rains, umbrellas pop open and some characters break into jog to escape the weather. Even the smallest of moments, like stopping at a toll booth on the bridge between the islands, add quite a layer of the realism. These details may seem mundane, but they ground you in the gaming world, making it feel true to life. This sense of immersion extends of how you interact with the environment. For instance, carjacking animations vary based on whether or not you're holding a weapon. The game's systems even allow for unexpected events like cops arresting you, a situation you can choose to resist or flee from, adding another layer of the unpredictability. One of the simplest yet most immersive activities is taking a cab ride, sitting in a back seat watching the city pass by through the window. It's an experience unlike any other. At times I would leave my console running just to use the game's ambient sounds as the background noise while doing my chores. One of the hallmarks of Grand Theft Auto series is in its game radio stations. It does an excellent job of capturing this era. Flipping through the stations you might stumble upon Kanye West's music, a reminder of the pre-controversies days, or find yourself vibing to Chet Baker's jazz. My favorite, it was definitely Vladivostok FM, all the popular Russian songs that you could listen in all day, all night. These moments evoke a sense of nostalgia, placing the game firmly to the late 2000s, a time when smartphones were just beginning to take over our lives. Speaking of smartphones, Grand Theft Auto 4 was one of the first games to integrate them meaningfully. In the game, the phone serves not only just as a tool to call friends, but also as a conduit for the exposition. When characters need to deliver important dialogue, they do so seamlessly through calls, keeping the player immersed in the game's world. The phone even acts as an old-school GPS, reminiscent of the early navigation devices that took ages to locate a satellite signal. This touchstone of an era, along with the inclusion of the internet cafes, cements the game's place in time. The cafes are the charming relic, offering players the chance to check emails or download ringtones. For those of us who remember paying for custom ringtones, these details are a delightful nod to a bygone era. Every time I revisit Liberty City, I find something new. This speaks volumes about the level of detail Rockstar packed into a game. For an example, during a recent playthrough, I discovered that taking too many photos of the dancers at the strip club angers the security guards. It's small details like this made the city feel alive and react to your actions. The visuals, while dated by the today's standards, still hold up in a way that's quite hard to quantify. Other games have never been about pushing graphical boundaries. Instead, they're always focused on style and the atmosphere. Even so, Grand Theft Auto 4's visuals were groundbreaking for their time, ushering in an era of gritty, realistic aesthetics. This trend towards muted tones might seem limiting, but it perfectly complements the game's narrative tone and Liberty City's morally ambiguous landscapes. When Grand Theft Auto 4 launched on the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360, it was locked at 30 frames per second, which was typical for the time. The PC version, though offering high frame rates, required significant tweaking to achieve optimal performance. Today, the Xbox Series X provides one of the best ways to experience this game. That said, the visuals show their age in places, especially with the blurry depth of field effects used to simulate distance. Character models, especially outside of the main cast, can look quite dated, but these imperfections are overshadowed by the game's soul. This elusive quality, the feeling that every element of the game has purpose and cohesion, it's just timeless. Liberty City may not be the most graphically advanced digital environment, but it's brimming with character and charm. Grand Theft Auto 4's story and gameplay come together to create an experience that feels both epic and intimate. Niko Bellic's journey from a struggling immigrant to a criminal powerhouse is filled with moments that highlight his humanity and complexity. Whether it's buy cheap clothes at a Russian store or donning a tailored suit to meet the city's elite, you never disconnect from Niko's narrative arc. One of the most iconic missions in the game is definitely 3-Leaf Clover, a bank heist inspired by the movie Heat. This mission is a masterclass in tension and pacing. It begins with Niko and his crew driving to the bank, their banter setting in a stage for the chaos to come. Once inside, the heist goes south, leading to the series of firefights throughout the city's streets and underground tunnels. It's a high-stakes, high-reward mission that culminates in $250,000 payday, a massive sum compared to the game's earlier missions. 3-Leaf Clover stands out not just for its scale but for its difficulty. This was before Rockstar introduced checkpoints, meaning failure meant starting over from the beginning. The mission's intensity is heightened by the need to manage your squad's survival while evading relentless police forces. Completing it feels like a genuine accomplishment, and the sense of reward is unparalleled. This mission also foreshadows the heist system later refined in Grand Theft Auto 5. It's a shame that 3-Leaf Clover is one of the few large-scale heists in Grand Theft Auto 4, as the game's other missions, while memorable, don't quite match that similar grandeur. It's not to say that the rest of the game is lacking, my goodness it's not. Missions like rescuing Roman from the Albanians or kidnapping a mafia's Don's daughter are packed with humor and action. The narrative's darker moments, such as confronting Niko's past, add emotional weight to the experience. These very missions keep the gameplay fresh and engaging, ensuring there's never a dull moment. Grand Theft Auto spin-offs have always managed to maintain a level of intrigue and innovation. Rockstar eventually released 2 DLC campaigns for Grand Theft Auto 4 under the title Episodes of Liberty City. These include The Lost and the Damned and The Ballad of Gay Tony. Both expansions take place in Liberty City during the same time frame as the events of the main game. However, they couldn't be more different in tone, gameplay, and narrative focus. So The Lost and the Damned shifts the spotlight to an entirely new storyline, allowing players to step into the shoes of Johnny Klebitz, a biker who made a minor appearance in a couple of missions in the main story. The DLC delves into the inner working of Johnny's biker's gang, the Lost, exploring power struggles that arise when Billy Gray, the president, is released from jail. Additionally, the narrative touches upon Johnny's complicated relationships, particularly with Ashley Butler, and other characters like Elizabeth Torres, a drug-dealing minor character from the base game. One major challenge for this DLC is the limited runtime. While Grand Theft Auto 4's main campaign had over 30 hours to develop its intricate relationships and dynamics, The Lost and the Damned attempts to accomplish somewhat of a similar feat in a fraction of that time. This rushed pacing often results in character relationships feeling shallow and underdeveloped. For an example, the story starts by portraying Johnny and his deep bonds with certain members of his gang, but as a player you don't feel the same connection. Similarly, Billy Gray, who is released from prison early in the story, comes across as an unlikable, reckless leader right off the get-go. He immediately begins forcing the gang into dirty and dangerous work, making it difficult to care about his fate or motivations. Johnny's relationship with Ashley is meant to add an emotional layer to his character, showcasing his vulnerability and humanity. However, instead of making him more relatable, it often paints him as a naive and foolish. Johnny is portrayed as a smart, confident leader with his gang, yet he continues to evolve himself with Ashley, who spends more time with Crackpipe than she does with him. This inconsistency in Johnny's character makes it harder to connect with him. Moreover, for those who have played Grand Theft Auto 5 and know Johnny's ultimate fate, the entire narrative of The Lost and the Damned can feel somewhat redundant. One of the more compelling aspects of the DLC is seeing characters and events from Grand Theft Auto 4's main story from a different perspective. These moments, such as Johnny's interactions with Niko Bellic, are highlights for many players. It's similar to watching interconnected Marvel movies or TV shows just to catch a glimpse of a familiar character like Captain America or perhaps Daredevil. However, even these crossovers can feel underwhelming. For an instance, earlier in DLC, the gang learns that one of their members was killed by a European, and despite eventually meeting Niko, Johnny fails to make the connection that Niko might be responsible. These missed opportunities lessens the impact of the narrative, unfortunately. Now, the gameplay-wise, The Lost and the Damned places a significant emphasis on the biker's lifestyle. A notable feature is the ability to call in your fellow gang members for backup, adding a sense of the camaraderie and teamwork. Much of the gameplay involves cruising around on your motorcycle, completing missions, and listening to an excellent soundtrack features tracked with artists like Alice Cooper, Deep Purple, and many others. The licensing music does an incredible job of capturing the mood and atmosphere of the biker's world, immersing players in the set. However, the focus on the motorcycles introduced its own set of challenges. Riding a motorcycle in Liberty City is inherently more dangerous than driving a car, just as it would be in real life. Players are more vulnerable to being shot or killed, making motorcycles a less practical choice for many missions. This becomes especially frustrating during high-stakes chases or when trying to escape from law enforcement with a high wanted level. Escaping on a motorcycle when you're being pursued by multiple police cars and helicopters often feels like a death sentence. It's a tactical disadvantage that detracts from its gameplay experience. Now, furthermore, the DLC suffers from the lack of the mission variety. A large percentage of the missions revolves around escaping from the cops and losing your wanted level. While resisting law enforcement has always been the core theme in Grand Theft Auto games, it became repetitive and monotonous in The Lost and the Damned. The missions rarely deviate from its formula, and when they do, they are often escort missions. Few things are more aggravating in Grand Theft Auto games when waiting for an AI character to get into the vehicle while you're under a heavy fire. These design choices make the overall experience feel, well, not as great as the original game. So the DLC introduces a handful of new weapons, but most of them fail to make a lasting impression. The automatic pistol is interesting, but unfortunately has very poor accuracy, while the sawed-off shotgun feels, well, somewhat underpowered comparing to the counterparts. The pipe bomb, essentially they're basically reskinned of the grenades, doesn't add much to the arsenal, and the grenade launcher lacks of the impact detonation limits its utility. The one standout is definitely automatic shotgun, often referred to as the street sweeper, which packs a satisfying punch. It's a weapon that has consistently been a fan favorite in various of games, from Resident Evil 4, Max Payne, and so others. So on a broader level, the overall gameplay and narrative experience of The Lost and the Damned feels a little bit underwhelming when compared to Grand Theft Auto 4. And revisiting the DLC years after its initial release highlights its flaws perhaps a little more. Perhaps part of the issue is the inevitable comparison to the main game, which is a masterpiece in its own right. Trying to follow up something as groundbreaking as Grand Theft Auto 4 with a spin-off DLC, it is indeed a daunting task. While The Lost and the Damned attempts to carve its own identity with the Grand Theft Auto 4's universe, it struggles to leave a lasting impact. Its focus on a biker's lifestyle and grittier tone is sets it apart, but the execution leaves much to be desired. For most players, the DLC greatest appeal lies in its connection to the main game and a brief appearance of Niko and other familiar characters. Now, even though I did mention few of the negative parts regarding The Lost and the Damned, I definitely have enjoyed my time with it, multiple times mind you. So, on the other hand, The Battle of Gay Tony, the second DLC for Grand Theft Auto 4, takes a completely different approach that provides a much needed contrast to The Lost and the Damned. The Battle of Gay Tony the last expansion for Grand Theft Auto 4 offers a refreshing change of a tone from a gritty seriousness of the main game and the somber atmosphere of The Lost and the Damned. Instead of diving into the bleak lives of Liberty City's outlaws, this expansion transports players into glitz and chaos of the nightlife scene. The story unfolds throughout the eyes of Luis Fernando Lopez, a bodyguard and confidant to Anthony Gay Tony Prince. While the narrative intertwines with Grand Theft Auto 4's timeline, Luis steps into the spotlight to showcase new perspective of the world Niko Bellic and Johnny Klebitz inhabit. If The Lost and Damned feels like attending a somber funeral for the people you barely know, the Balgate Tony is a polar opposite, a vibrant, high-energy party where everyone knows your name. This tonal shift becomes evident almost immediately, as the game emphasizes the nightlife of Liberty City. Players can participate in nightclub activities, including mini-games like dancing with women or hooking up in a bathroom. It's a bold contrast to the grim and oppressing theme of its predecessor, making the Balgate Tony arguably the most entertaining expansion of the Grand Theft Auto 4. The main story focuses on Luis and his relationship with Tony, as well as their involvement in the criminal underworld. Tony drowning in debts and struggling to keep his nightclub empire afloat, often finds himself in a precarious of situations. Luis, both Tony's employee and a friend, steps up to help him navigate these challenges. Despite the title, Tony himself doesn't take center stage for much of his earlier narrative. Instead, Luis's perspective dominates, and players spend a significant amount of time working for other characters to chip away at Tony's debts. Among these characters is Maury, an arrogant and overbearing brother of Brucey. Maury's obnoxious personality provides both comic relief and moments of frustration for Luis. Another notable character is Yusuf Amir, a hilarious eccentric and wealthy who commissions Luis for increasingly absurd tasks. Yusuf's over-the-top demeanor making him one of the most memorable personalities in the entire Grand Theft Auto series. The missions he provides range from stealing trains to hijacking helicopters, offering some of the most chaotic and entertaining gameplay moments. One of the pivotal storylines in Balgate Tony involves Gracie, who happens to be kidnapped by Niko Bellic himself and Patrick McCrary in Grand Theft Auto 4's main story, an event that carries over into this expansion. Luis and Tony's involvement in rescuing Gracie highlights this deep entanglement in Liberty City's underworld. The Balgate Tony cleverly weaves its narrative into the fabric of Grand Theft Auto 4, allowing players to witness iconic moments from a fresh angle. For instance, Luis is one of the hostages during the Niko's infamous bank heist with the McCrary brothers. Later, he ambushes Niko's diamond deal at the Liberty City Museum, further linking the expansion's events to the main game. These crossover adds a depth of the overarching story, enriching the Grand Theft Auto 4's universe. The gameplay in the Balgate Tony builds upon the solid foundation of the Grand Theft Auto 4 while introducing new mechanics and missions. Some of the most memorable moments including parachuting off the skyscraper, using a golf club to intimidate enemies, and engaging high-stakes shootouts. The addition of new weapons such as the 44 auto pistol, the P90 submachine gun, and the explosive AA-12 shotgun adds a variety of firepower to the combat. Sticky bombs in particular offer a versatility tool for both missions and free-roam chaos. However, not all gameplay elements are a hit. The combat helicopter missions, for instance, are notably frustrating due to the lack of the proper crosshair. Another feature is the club management minigame, where Luis oversees security at Tony's nightclubs. While this mechanic adds something to the game, it ultimately feels shallow and underutilized. There's a little incentive to engage with the system beyond its initial novelty, and it just doesn't contribute meaningfully to the story or gameplay progression. One of the standout aspects of the Balgate Tony is the depiction of the city's nightlife. The game sheds the dreamy, saturated filter of The Lost and the Damned in favor of vibrant, colorful visuals that bring the city's club scene to life. Neon lights, thumping music, and bustling crowds create an immersive atmosphere that perfectly captures the energy of the late-night revelry. The soundtrack also deserves praise, featuring a mix of new songs that complements the game's party vibe. For players who frequented nightclubs in their younger years, the music might even evoke a sense of nostalgia. 3D can also trigger some cringy-worthy memories of failed pickup lines or wasted money on tequila shots. The Battlegate Tony stands out with the Grand Theft Auto series for its lighter, more playful tone. While it doesn't shy away from the violence and criminality that defined the franchises, it injects a sense of fun and flamboyance that feels more akin to Saints Row than a traditional GTA. Features like dancing mini-games and the option for booty calls highlight these tonal shifts, offering a break from darker themes of other entries. That said, the new characters introduced in this expansion, while entertaining, struggle to match the depth and the memorability of Grand Theft Auto 4's original cast. Niko Bellic's journey remains emotional core of the Grand Theft Auto 4's experience, and the supporting characters in the Battlegate Tony often feels like an exaggerated caricatures by comparison. Despite this, the expansion, vibrant atmosphere, and engaging gameplay make it a worthwhile addition to the series. You know, revisiting the Battlegate Tony is a reminder of Rockstar's ability to create immersive, diverse worlds that caters to the wide range of player experiences. The expansion's light-headed tone and high-energy gameplay provides a welcome contrast to the somber themes of The Lost and the Damned and, of course, Grand Theft Auto 4. It's a testament to Rockstar's storytelling prowess that these expansions, despite their differences, feel like an integral part of the Grand Theft Auto 4's universe. You know, playing through all of this, the Battlegate Tony, The Lost and the Damned, and of course Grand Theft Auto 4 all over again, just highlights the timeless quality of these games. Even more than a decade after these releases, they hold up as compelling experiences that transport players back to the moments that they first explored Liberty City. Few titles achieve this level of longevity, and it's a quality shared by Rockstar's best work, from Max Payne to Red Dead Redemption. As the gaming world looks ahead to Grand Theft Auto 6, it's clear that Grand Theft Auto 4 and its expansions have left an indelible mark on the franchise. While the subsequent games have built upon the systems and mechanics introduced in Grand Theft Auto 4, the gritty storytelling and grand world of Liberty City remains outmatched. The Battlegate Tony may be a smaller piece for its larger puzzle, but it's a piece worth revisiting for its unique charm and energy. For the fans of the series, it's a chance to relive of the highs and lows of Liberty City nightlife and just the overall whole package. And for the newcomers, it's invitation to the party that is still going strong. 17 years later, Grand Theft Auto 4 is a very special game, and it has a place in my heart, being it is my most favorite game of all time. And at that, thank you so much for watching, like and subscribe. See you guys all, and have a wonderful day.